Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Up front this week, research at the University of Texas at El Paso aims to improve safety in space. Anthony Moreno has more.
El Paso native and former astronaut Danny Olivas is helping lead a new mission at the University of Texas, El Paso. Olivas, director of space initiatives at the university, says work being done at the Center for the Advancement of Space Safety and Mission Assurance Research is helping understand new opportunities in space.
We have seen, really within the last 15 years or so, new opportunities evolve in new space, commercial space.
Darren Cohen, executive director at CASMAR, says the center basically works to identify the greatest potential risks to successful missions like launch, ascent, reentry, and existing in orbital conditions.
What are the biggest risks that keep engineers and scientists up at night? And we try to functionalize focused research to better characterize those risks and identify ways that we can reduce their impact to mission planning and architecture and execution.
Students working at CASMAR are using recovered pieces of the Space Shuttle Columbia for further research into understanding risks associated with space travel. Jacqueline Reyes, a doctoral student working at CASMAR, completed an internship at NASA during her undergraduate studies and worked in the orbital debris department. Today, she continues her work in orbital debris.
And since Columbia, it underwent the ultimate failure, so we have unique information that is that can be obtained from the Columbia materials, and that is something that I look forward to investigating further and see what it can do to help benefit the orbital debris community and the rest of the space industry as a whole.
Another PhD student working with CASMAR is Arlene Smith, who as an undergraduate already was familiar with researching Columbia, and that intrigued her to continue the studies in her graduate work.
When I got in touch with my mentor, then he had told me about the Columbia remnants that are available and the research that's going on with Columbia here at UTEP. Well, so I was able, as an undergraduate student, to take some pieces, some exemplar pieces that mimicked what Columbia had gone through, and then I was able to take those pieces and characterize them according to metallography techniques.
Danny Olivas says partnering with companies and government agencies in research provides students at CASMAR promising opportunities.
If they want to go academic, they can obviously go do that because they'll have the credentials to do that. If they want to go into the private sector, they can do so because now they have a network of people that they can reach out to. And we've seen already some of our students get referrals, from one colleague that they've been working with who's made recommendations for them with another colleague. And to me, that's what it's all about, is to provide this infrastructure, this kind of a student ecosystem to get the students engaged in whatever they want to do with their lives.
Lives that may have an opportunity of contributing to what Olivas calls the new era in space. For KRWG, I'm Anthony Moreno.
From the world of space travel to the big screen, a New Mexico State University alumnus recently returned to campus, and he's one of the most important names in animation. Michael Hernandez introduces us to the co-creator of the giant film company Pixar.
Clovis and Las Cruces are my two hometowns. I have aunts and uncles and cousins, and my sister came down from Clovis, and I wanted to see my aunt and uncle, especially because they're approaching 90, frail, and my Uncle George was the man who taught me how to paint. He was the very important person in my life, and it was my desire to combine painting with computers that led me to computer graphics. So this is really important, this relationship with Uncle George. I think most people know that color can be represented by a red component, a blue component, and a green component, by three primary colors. Ed Catmull and I added a fourth component to each color called alpha, and that's the transparency of a pixel, whether you can see through it or not. And if you can see through it, how much can you see it? Is it 50% of, you know, is it 50% transparent or 90% transparent or 0% opaque? So with this fourth channel, you could vary the opacity of a pixel, and that allowed us to combine one image over another where the back image could show through partially. Oh yeah, 3D paint. In virtual reality, you can 3D paint. You go into a 3D space with the virtual reality glasses, and you hold a wand in your hand. You have some buttons to control, and you can paint in 3D space. You can paint over your own body, for example, and then walk away from the painting, and it's your outline of yourself. Or you can paint over your hand, and there's your hand represented just with paint strokes. But it's obviously a hand, and then you can move around it or move it. So that's a completely unexplored space. Yes, in fact, I'm a little worried about it, or almost frightened about it. Let me explain that. I am now into grandparenthood and fully in love with grandchildren. It sounds trite, but it's just absolutely one of the most wonderful things in the world, as grandparents have always said it was. He's 6 years old now. When he was 2, he was a crazy 2-year-old. He was banging off the walls. Everybody knows that 2-year-olds are nuts. They're nutcases. So one day I decided, he was visiting my home, and I decided to introduce him to the Pixar oeuvre. So I brought him in the front of the big television screen. I slipped in Finding Nemo, and this 2-year-old stared at the screen and didn't budge for an hour and a half. And he didn't blink once. And all of a sudden I realized, my God, we're directly programming the brains of 2-year-old human beings. That's a scary responsibility. I'm really glad I didn't perceive that before we did it, right? But I think we've done all right. I get praise all the time from parents, but a lot of that is because we're the best babysitter ever invented, and I realize that. But I think we're doing okay with the responsibility. Pixar, favorite project. Of course, I love the pieces that they do, but just seeing that thing through all the hell we had to go through, and the financing and learning. I had to learn how to be a businessman. I'm not a businessman, but I had to learn how to do it because that's what was required to get us there. And then finally it all happened, and you look back at it and say, oh, holy cow, that's wonderful. I'm such a proud papa. I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book called A Biography of the Pixel. I've been working on it for 7 years, on chapter 7, so the rate is 1 chapter a year. Another chapter to go probably. It's a lay guide to how the modern media world works. And the original motivation was to discover that nobody that I talked to knows what a pixel is, which I found horrifying. That's like not knowing about gravity. Computer graphics in general, I'm sick and tired of robots and transformers and explosions. And yeah, let's get that out of our system. You know, you can do that with computer graphics, but let's get back to good stories. You know, I grew up in Clovis, small town. I came to school here. It's not one of the you know the renowned universities of the world, and I didn't know that. I thought it was people in other places that could get, you know, get famous and make money and be successful. It was always people somewhere else. It wasn't us, and it is us. And I named some names up here of my friends who come from here. Jim Clark's another guy. He grew up in Plainview, Texas. Did Netscape. You can do it. This is where people come from that do those things. I hope that's the message that got through.
Welcome to In Focus. I'm Anthony Moreno. KRWG is interviewing people who have announced their candidacy for the 2nd Congressional District seat. Today, we are joined by someone who has announced his candidacy for the Democratic primary in the 2nd Congressional District here in New Mexico. Please welcome Angel Peña. Thank you very much for joining us.
Anthony, pleasure. Thank you, sir.
So let's start off, if you could share with us why you are running for this seat.
Yeah, fairly simple. You know, for far too long, we down here in southern New Mexico have relied on elite politicians and their failed politics to lead the transformation that we're hungry for here in New Mexico. And I'm afraid it won't happen, and it hasn't happened, until we elect someone who's a reflection of who we are, until we elect someone who understands the everyday struggle of everyday New Mexicans.
Now, you say everyday struggle. I mean, what are some of the things that you feel New Mexicans are dealing with on an everyday basis?
You know, right off the bat, the poverty level. 1 out of every 4 southern New Mexicans, 25% of us at home, are living beneath the poverty level. Here in Doña Ana County alone, that's nearly 12,000 families who are forced to make tough decisions.
Tough decisions. You know, I saw on your website, you had mentioned, you know, that you want to solve some of these issues. How do you propose that you can bring a solution to some of these problems, like the poverty issues that face many people here in southern New Mexico?
Yeah, you know, I have built my reputation and career out of getting things done by forging relationships and effective partnerships between anyone from ranchers to sportsmen and women to Native American communities and even empowering Hispanic communities. I intend to take those experiences and skills and put them to work here in southern New Mexico. It's simple. It's investing in our people and picking people over politics every time.
So, I mean, you know, we're talking about poverty, but essentially we're talking about the economy as well here in New Mexico. I did see on your website that you said you wanted to bring fresh ideas to New Mexico, to this district. What are some of those ideas?
You know, it's taking things that we already have organically moving. For example, the Santa Teresa Port of Export, excuse me. It's taking opportunities like that and leveraging them and putting people back to work instead of prioritizing, like the wall, for example, along our border.
So, I mean, what are some of the things, if elected, that you think that you could help do to, you know, increase that growth that's happening?
Yeah, I think there are a few, definitely the team and I have looked at this as a short-term and long-term goal, right? I think right off the bat there are a few things that every person of every faith can embrace, and I think that starts by making sure that our kids have access to decent health care. And more into that, the child health care insurance program. CHIP, yes sir. That's one thing that's not a discussion we should be having every 2 years. That's something that should be sustainable and something where Congress can then focus their attention and energy to activating and leveraging those economy opportunities along the border.
One of the other things that is an issue here for many folks who are seeking this seat is immigration.
Yeah.
What I saw on your website that you said you will fight for comprehensive immigration reform. What does that mean to you?
I'm a first-generation American, and I'm very proud of where my family and our history comes from. When it comes to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, when it comes to our Dreamers, when it comes even to the most recent recession of the TPS, you know, I will not support and I will fight against any policies that do not embrace the diversity of our traditions that make southern New Mexicans so proud and our country great.
You know, one of the issues that you mentioned was, you know, what's happening with DACA and with Dreamers. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you propose a solution for that?
I stand with Dreamers. Simple answer. I think we need to pick people over politics. By doing so, you're concentrating and empowering your constituents. So that way, when we're in DC, it's an easy fight. It's simple. I'm empowering the people, and I'm simply raising their voices to DC.
Immigration advocates have been pushing for a, quote, clean Dream Act. Do you support that?
I do. I think we need to take where we're at and make sure it's sustainable and works for everyone. I think every person and every family who decides and wants to come and make a better future for themselves here in America should have the opportunity to do so.
What are some of the other reasons that you are seeking this seat? What are some of the other issues that you feel are really facing New Mexicans here in this district?
I'm a father of two little girls, cruceñas, through and through. A 10-year-old who's more going on like 15 or 16, and a 1-year-old that we just got baptized actually just last month. I think too many families down here are forgotten. We've hit the road hard. In the past 10 days, we've been in 5 counties. And one of the things we keep hearing from Lordsburg to Hobbs is that they feel forgotten and that their families, parents do not feel like they have access to the types of resources they need to make their family well and succeed. And so I think by investing in them and prioritizing them, that's how we start to move the needle down here.
Do you feel that there's a disconnect between elected officials who are serving in Washington, D.C. and the people in southern New Mexico?
I do. I think, you know, a lot of our politicians are more worried and constrained by paying back their donors, and that needs to change. We need people who understand the real struggles, what it is to make hard decisions for your family. For example, many families here in Doña Ana County alone and across our district every month, especially around the holiday season, have to make tough decisions, like trying to figure out how they're going to pay for their full utility bill, how they're going to manage their child care bill that is not cheap, and the unexpected doctor bill that comes because it's Christmas time.
You know, there are many issues. I know you are also have done some work in conservation. What are your thoughts about how public land should be dealt with, you know, across the nation and also here in New Mexico?
In New Mexico, across the state, 65% of the population use public lands. And I think it's more than half of that use BLM lands. Here in Las Cruces, in Doña Ana County, some of our busiest times for do you know what the busiest time for our public lands are here in our district?
I would think that it would be, you know, when it's a little bit warmer out, possibly maybe in around this time when it's warmer than other places, perhaps.
Sure, yeah, that's great. That's good. That's true. But it's Easter, actually, because families down here in southern New Mexico go outside to be reminded of why we live down here, right? Because it's simple. It's about our families. It's about the places that we love. And when it comes to public lands, it's about protecting the stories and the traditions that are tied up in those places.
We just have, you know, about a little over a couple minutes left. I want to give you an opportunity to really share with our audience who you are and what you're about.
I'm a hardworking guy. My mom ingrained in me at a very young age that everything you do, you should do with faith and you should do with passion. She also taught me that sometimes you have no other option than to succeed. And I'm ready to take that and put it to work for us because I know that's what we need in New Mexico. We need someone who is just like you. We need someone who is just like me. We need someone who understands the cooks. We need someone who will prioritize and focus on our families and the hard-working people of southern New Mexico.
I also want to ask you, you know, you're running in the Democratic primary for this seat. We just have about a minute left. What sets you apart from the other candidates seeking the Democratic nomination?
Besides my professional career and reputation of getting things done and moving that needle, I know what it is to have to raise a young family. I know what it is to have to not be able to be home on the holidays because you're working to make sure that your utility bills and your child care bill is paid for and your family's taken care of. And so I know what it takes. I know what people are going through, and that's why we're going to take it all the way to the win.
One other thing is, though, I mean, you mentioned you are the alternate in your website.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, briefly?
Yeah. In addition to the fact that the demographic across our country is changing, in addition to the fact that marginalized communities, of which 50% of Southern New Mexicans are, I did not see their voices up there. I'm also younger than others and have the energy and the know-how and the new creative experience to help move needles down here in Southern New Mexico, and so that's what we're doing.
Angel Peña, thank you very much for joining us.
Anthony, thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
And we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of In Focus. I'm Anthony Moreno.
The park, when it was established, from my understanding, that the Deming Ranchette, which was owned by the May family, that were established here in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they owned the place just west of where we're standing. One of the Mays was very interested in rock hounding, and when the park was donated, or how it worked out in 1966, it kind of became the name of Rockhound State Park. So rock hounding is for somebody that's interested in rocks. I mean, it's, you know, the different types of precious minerals and stones you find here. So we get people from all over the country that come and check this out and are anxious to come and find their geodes or their jasper or whatever they're interested. And it polishes up and makes a beautiful jewelry in displays. Rockhound itself has two hiking trails, the Jasper and Thunder Egg Trail, and I would consider those moderate hiking trails. The Jasper leads from our visitor center that's behind us here and intersects the Thunder Egg Trail, which is in the body of the park. And it planes along the Little Floridas for about a mile, and that's where a lot of people hunt the geodes, thunder eggs, and other stones or minerals that they can find, is off the washes and ravines off that Thunder Egg Trail. I think the thing that makes this park unique is you can take a souvenir rock with you. This is one of the only two places in the United States that you can take something from a park. The mission of all state parks is to protect the natural resources. You can come and take a souvenir, and the rules for rock collecting are designated and permissible in designated areas. And what I mean by designated areas, so the Thunder Egg Trail or the Jasper Trail are the areas that you can find the stones, you can take from there. A small tool like a rock hammer, no more than 12 inches, and it can't be for resale or for trade or commercial use. So that was kind of in our rules. That I want to make that clear. Rockhound has 29 sites. We have a day use area, which is 4 sites that people can come out and picnic and have a cookout, has a table, grill, and a shelter. And then the 29 sites are for camping. We have on 23 of those sites that has electric and water. We have a restroom with showers. We have a dump station, which is kind of important to a lot of our RVers. And the park actually stays very busy from October through April. The park is almost at capacity or near capacity during those months. The cost to come into the park, it's $5 entry fee, and that's per vehicle. So I suggest people, if you're gonna come out to the park and you have a picnic, try to carpool and stuff as many people as you can fit in the car. But overnight camping,
If you don't need electricity, it's $10 a night, and if you require electricity, it's $14 a night to stay in the park. Well, of course, you can check out our website, nmparks.com, and each park is unique, so tooting our own horn, but I encourage people to come check out our website and our different events that we have throughout the year, and we do have that posted as well. But each park is unique, and we definitely promote and advertise our sister parks in the area, City of Rocks and Pancha Villa, which I've worked at both of those places. I think the beautiful landscapes, I take it for granted being raised in the area. I drive through the park sometimes, patrol in the evening, and I see people with their cameras and their binoculars looking at the beautiful sunsets, hence the name Land of Enchantment.
That's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition 5 to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now, noon to 2, and All Things Considered, 4 to 7. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Email us with your story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. For all of us at KRWG News, I'm Fred Martino. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.